I slapped a child in the face and then shoved him off his scooter. I'm 25. I have literally done nothing at work for a decade. Mistake at 35,000 feet. People could have died. I recently took a short vacation to a lesser developed country. On my last night, I decided to sample some of the more exotic local fare and had a mixed seafood dish, which was quite good. All was fine until the flight home when I started feeling lots of pressure in my abdomen. I could tell I wasn't going to shart, so I leaned over a bit and poofed out a bit of gas, smooth as silk. I was giving myself a mental high five when I realized that was supposed to have been a sly poot turned out to be a horrendous stench bomb that instantly engulfed several rows fore and aft. Little baby started crying immediately. I'm sorry, that's not funny. While the adults let out short barks that registered somewhere between shock and despair. In a display of primal instinct, a couple of teens sitting across the aisle reflexively pulled their t-shirt collars up over their mouth and nose. The gas was so dense and foul that I thought I could maybe see it clouding the air in the cabin. A flight attendant up front noticed the commotion and bustled down the aisle, but upon entering the contaminated zone, instantly spun on her heel and beat a hasty retreat. There was no way I was going to fess up and apologize, so instead I just scowled and pretended to look around for the culprit. Fortunately, things cleared out pretty fast. I didn't dare try it again. I had taken my fellow passengers by surprise the first time, but now they were wary and fully alert for the rest of the flight. Anyone that made their way back to the lavatory was subject to the scrutiny of 100 eyes. We landed, and I deplaned without further incident. However, I totally trashed a toilet in customs, but that's another story. Little baby started to cry. Friggin' brilliant. Why are people who tell bowel movement stories always so goddamn eloquent and creative with their words? That's you know what? That's a good point. I feel like every time someone tells a fart or poop story, it's just like, did Edgar Allan Poe come back from the dead and write this story? Good lord. I steal hermit crabs from souvenir shops. You know those hermit crabs they sell as pets to tourists in coastal souvenir shops? The ones with shells that have badly painted cartoon characters on them? The ones that come free with the purchase of a little plastic carrier with a thin layer of brightly colored gravel, some flake food, and a shallow water dish with a sea sponge in it? Maybe your parents let you get one while you were on vacation as a child because it's such a simple little pet, and maybe it lived for a few weeks or months or even a couple years in that little plastic box before you noticed a bad smell and found it dead. And maybe you shrugged it off because it's just a little crab, and they don't live long, right? Those crabs have a lifespan of 30 plus years. Those crabs are highly social and need to be kept in groups. Those crabs require air that's around 80% humidity or higher in order to breathe and kept at around 26 degrees Celsius / 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Those crabs need separate pools of both fresh and salt water using marine aquarium salt that are deep enough to fully submerge themselves in so they can regulate their internal salinity. They need large enclosures with deep substrate to burrow down in so they can molt. They need a varied and nutrient-rich diet with fresh fruit and vegetables. The little crab you got as a souvenir in the same place selling custom airbrush shirts and shark tooth necklaces died a slow and miserable death. It's a miracle it made it that far to begin with, as all the hermit crabs sold in these shops and major pet retailers are collected from the wild. They have their natural shells broken off their bodies with a hammer, so they have no choice but to wear some kitsy garbage with Spider-Man painted on it. Roughly 50% don't survive the process, and no one seems to care. I care. Several years ago, I was in one of those shops and saw hundreds of hermit crabs kept in a bare, unheated open-air cage with only a shallow dish of water. I could smell them before I saw them. Dead little bodies rotting in their shells and limbs strewn about. Children were encouraged to pick them up and play with them and beg their parents for one because they're hardly more complicated than a pet rock, right? If I bought some of them, I could give them a chance to live. But in doing so, I'd be supporting a cruel industry and funding the death of so many more. I'm not sure how long I paced around the shop with my moral dilemma before a sudden realization hit me. I have pockets. As casually as I could, I picked out a couple sickly crabs and gently put them into my pocket. My heart was racing, but no one stopped me when I walked out the door, and so started my life of crime. I don't do it often, but if I'm in town with one of those souvenir shops, I'll pop in and jailbreak a few hermit crabs. I gravitate towards the weak ones and those missing limbs. They're on their way out, but I want them to have a chance, or at least die as comfortably as they can. The ones that have pulled through are all healthy and active now. Colony of contraband crabs. I love the background noise of their shells clacking against their terrarium and each other as they go about their crab business. I'm a little drunk and sentimental tonight, which is my excuse for writing all this. I have a feeling most folks won't care to read it all, but I hope they do, and somehow it'll make a difference. If you made it through my rambling, thanks. May you never be pinched. Yeet them into the ocean like Gob Bluth with the letter while screaming, "Go back to whence you came from!" I don't usually condone thievery, but I can applaud this. Animals are not souvenirs. Guys, it's so true. Animals are not souvenirs. They're animals. They live. They have feelings. They have a brain. Be nice to animals. Treat them well. I got mad at my girlfriend today day and opened her MacBook Air I had wrapped under the tree and rewrapped it and addressed it to my son. Girlfriend and I got into an argument over our kid's Christmas spending budget. We both have a kid from a previous relationship, her daughter, and my son. We have an agreed budget of $1,000 for each kid. We have met that budget for both kids last week. Today she tells me she wants to get her daughter a phone and wants to buy her an iPhone XS Max, easily putting her daughter close to $1,200 over our agreed Christmas budget. We have a shared bank account, so it's not quite it's her daughter and her money, so what's the deal kind of thing. We argued for 3 days over the issue. We couldn't afford to spend another $1,200 on my son to even out the budgets again at a ludicrous $2,200 each. My son would have never known if we spent extra money on her, but that's not the point. It's unfair, and in my opinion, it's favoritism. After another very heated argument over the issue, I walked over to the tree, grabbed her present, opened it in front of her, and then rewrapped it and addressed it to my son. Now the budgets are mostly equal again, give or take $100. Merry Christmas, P.S. The MacBook was purchased on my personal credit card, so she wouldn't have known about it. A classic Christmas tale. Is a $1,000 budget for one person's Christmas presents not insane to anyone else? Yeah, it kind of is. I feel like when I was growing up, the most luscious and ludicrous thing I got for Christmas was like the Nintendo DS, which was what, like $150? If that? So, sheesh. Good for them, I guess. I stole my son's teacher's keys. My son has Asperger's, which is like autism light. We've done extensive therapy and intervention, and for the most part, he is no different than any other kid his age, except he comes across as shy and a bit nerdy, saying that with love. The only issue we had at school was that he would become overwhelmed, panic, and run out of the classroom. Of course, that is not okay, and we in school decided to allow him to take quick breaks to decompress when he starts feeling overwhelmed. He has not had an incident since 3rd grade. He started the 6th grade last year, and it's hard for any kid, especially for an Aspie's kid. We met with all of his teachers and reminded them that he has this accommodation in writing, and he will likely need to use it since middle school is tough for an Aspie kid. All but one of his teachers understood that and were supportive. His math teacher is just a nasty bitch. She's one of those teachers that should not be a teacher. We're not those crazy in-your-face parents. We just want what's best for our son and work with his teachers do so. We kept on reminding her verbally and in writing, especially as our son's anxiety started to grow around her. Imagine my surprise when I get a call from his counselor telling me to pick my son up. Apparently, he had bolted from her classroom and ran out to the field. Principal and a counselor tried to escort him to the office, and he refused unless they called me, and horrified me because I've seen videos of cops being called and tasering or hitting special needs kids. When I got there, my son was very upset. It was like watching years of progress unravel. Apparently, he started to feel overwhelmed in her class because she's a bitch. She turned on the heat too high and closed all the doors. He felt trapped and claustrophobic. When he asked for a break, she refused and told him to sit down or get detention. That only fueled his anxiety more, and he exploded. The school quickly accepted that the situation was handled poorly by the teacher. I requested that he switch classes and even threatened to get a lawyer for not following the accommodations that they are required by law to follow. That got their attention quickly. They did not send him back to her class. Rather, he went to another class until the matter was resolved. The teacher did get into trouble and wanted to discuss it with us before pulling him out of her class. We met with her, and she was just a nasty bitch. She accused our son of using his diagnosis as a crutch, and he needed to grow up. I wanted to slap her. She went to take a phone call, and I saw her keys on her desk. I put them in my pocket, and we finished our conversation, and I politely thanked her for her time. Then I threw her keys in a dumpster and got my son pulled out of her class the next day. That made my day, lol. Look, I don't condone stealing. But if you got a bad teacher who's gonna do that to your son, revenge is a dish best served sweet. I'll just leave it at that. Something scared me and my brother really bad when we were younger, and I'm just now remembering the details. We were watching one of the Garfield movies. I can't remember off the top of my head, and everything was well until the I Feel Good song by James Brown started playing in the movie. Now you may ask, what could have scared you so bad from a song like that? Well, I'll tell you. In the beginning of the song, James Brown does this sort of scream, I guess you could say. Well, me and my brother had no idea that it was part of the song, and we thought the scream came from somewhere in our room. After hearing the scream, we immediately ran to our parents' room and told them that we heard someone scream from inside our room. So my father jumps up and grabs a knife from the kitchen and walks into our room to find nothing in there. So now everyone in the house thinks there's an intruder, so we all go lock ourselves in my parents' bedroom and call the police. Police show up and find nothing. I was watching the movie with my niece the other day and heard that familiar scream and realized that it was only the movie, and we'd had called the police for no reason at all. Wow, I feel good. Pack the frickin' bags, Karen, the place is haunted. That's really good. I love that. I insulted a child who I thought was wearing a costume while waiting outside my kid's school to pick them up. Class of middle schoolers walked past. It was close to Halloween. I looked up when a girl with makeup and colored hair called out hi to me. I was kind of caught off guard, but noticed she was made up for Halloween and guessed she wanted some attention for her costume. I noticed what looked like big teeth and assumed they were fake. Trying to be funny, I said, wow, you really need to see a dentist. Almost immediately, I regretted it. I think I heard her mutter, how rude, and my brain finally caught up and realized her teeth were not not fake, but just abnormally prominent. There was nothing I could do at this point. I've seen her once more around the school, but didn't say anything. I can't really say, sorry, I thought those were fake costume teeth. That would not help. Now I just feel like an a-hole. I physically cringe every time I think about it. Holy frickin' stuff. Lol, this is probably the worst thing I've read someone confess on this subreddit yet. I'm cringing too. Lol, oof. Your comment may have crushed one soul, but sharing your story on Reddit has lifted many other ones. You really need to see a dentist after eating all this Halloween candy. You could have come back from this. It wasn't Halloween yet. She didn't have all the Halloween candy yet. I don't think that would have worked. We swapped our twin brothers at birth. When I was 11, my mom gave birth to my little brothers, identical twin boys. My sister and I, also identical twins, decided it would be funny to swap them. They had bands on their wrist identifying them, but we were able to ease them off and swap them. We then placed them in each other's cribs. We did it because we thought our parents would realize straight away and laugh, since they were able to tell us apart even when we swapped clothes. However, they didn't. A while later, possibly a few weeks to a month, we decided to swap them back because we gradually became scared they'd find out and we'd get into trouble. We swapped their baby grows that had their names on it, but by that time, my mom had gotten used to their faces and individuality and asked what we were playing at swapping their clothes. We never told her that we were actually trying to reverse an original and successful trick because we knew she wouldn't believe us or be furious. So we are the only family members who know that they were swapped and that the eldest is actually the youngest. Only one of our best friends know the truth. They are 16 in December. We plan to tell them one day because they have a right to know, but neither of us have the balls at the moment. Lol, but at this point, who cares? Their names don't matter, their personality does. It's about who's the oldest. Honestly, that's one you should both take to the grave. I can't see any good coming from admitting what you did. Yeah, having to admit that their entire, they're each other? That's messed up. If I had a twin brother that their names got swapped, I'd be mad and I wouldn't forgive them. That's like insane to me. Mother breaks down at dinner and confesses the horrifying truth of the missing bear. This is a confession to me from my mother. So many years ago, I was sat around the dinner table with my mom and she broke down in hysterical laughter, tears and all, and told me she had something to tell me. She couldn't live with the lie anymore. When I was a little girl, I used to have a child-sized bear, originally named Big Bear, who lived under my bed to protect me from monsters, etc. I loved this bear. He was my protector and my best friend. My mom, however, hated this bear. In her mind, he was one of those cheap bears you can win at the fairgrounds stuffed full of straw. But to me, he was perfect. When I was 8 years old, we moved house, and during this move, Big Bear went missing, believed stolen. My parents assured me that they had contacted the police and they were on the case. Eventually, time passed, and I forgot about Big Bear and life moved on. Coincidentally, at the same time of Big Bear's mysterious disappearances, I was in my school play, Teddy Bear's Tea Party, and my role was Teddy Bear number 2. My costume was amazing. It was a handmade, full zip-up teddy bear costume, complete with a cute little bonnet with a pink bow. I was the cutest teddy bear in the whole show, confirmed by my grandparents. Now, you've probably guessed the terrible secret that my mother has carried with her all these years. My amazingly cute teddy bear costume was Big Bear. She had murdered him, pulled out his insides, and cut off his head. She then cut off his face, attached a bow to his head, and made me wear his cold, dead, very cute, and fluffy teddy bear skin. I think she finally caved and confessed because she could no longer live with the guilt. I was, and still am, traumatized. Rip Big Bear, R.I.P. That was not the ending I was expecting. Look at me. I'm the Big Bear now. That is morbid. That's crazy. It was a complete plot twist. I have literally done nothing at work for a decade. I have a great job in Canada doing data entry and analytics. I would prefer not to give the field of work as it's fairly specific. $70K a year, benefits, whole 9 yards, really awesome. The confession is that all my info was pulled from standard Excel files made by other people. In my first month, I made a macro that pulls from 50 plus places on our shared drive and compiles a 5-page report daily. The email sends itself at random times around 2:30 every day, Monday through Friday. Everyone thinks I'm amazing at my job. I'm the laziest fork you'll ever meet. I'm almost done getting a VPN function approved that will allow me to work from home. When you eventually leave/retire, will you reveal your secret? Teach me. You know what? That's honestly based because, hey, you can't work your entire life. Live your life, man. And if you're smart enough to make a macro that does your job for you and you get paid $70,000 a year, brother, take that. Good for you. I made a Facebook meme page in high school that got the police involved. When I was in high school, I created a meme page that made fun of every teacher, student, and faculty there. Some of them were extremely offensive and were basically attacks on individuals. I just kept doing it for the lulz. Once the administration got a hold of it, they hired a private investigator to find the culprit. Luckily, I wasn't that stupid, so I made and uploaded all my memes from the library computer. I started making memes, making fun out of the bad administration in the investigation, which then escalated into a whole chase for me with the police involved. They threatened legal action, but since they couldn't find me, I just kept memeing my way through high school. During my graduation day, I posted one final meme that said that I just graduated and that the search team sucks. I think at that point, they had an idea it was me, but they never proved it. It feels good to finally let it out. Haha. I never told anyone. I had a fear for snitches. Kid in my high school did something very similar right when memes originally became popular, but was eventually caught and expelled. A cheap camera in the library could have solved this pretty quick. I'm pretty sure they could have easily tracked it by computer and time it was posted. I slapped a child in the face and then shoved him off his scooter. I'm 25. So I have a beloved kitty named Pixie. She was around 4 when I found her on the street. She had a rubber band tightened on half her tail. I spent 2 weeks feeding her until she was comfortable enough to let me near her. She didn't trust anyone. I took her in, cleaned her up, and got the dead portion of her tail amputated. After 5 years, she finally warmed up to people and she became so sweet and friendly. It took her years to be comfortable around strangers. Last month, she was out for her daily stroll around the neighborhood and immediately came back in through the kitty door 20 minutes later. Usually, she is out and about for 2 to 3 hours. She had 2 small holes in her chest and 1 near her butt. She was completely frightened and was crying/meowing. She wouldn't even let me go near her for the first 5 minutes. I knew for certain that she was shot with metal BBs. I take her in my car and start driving to the vet, but took a quick detour around the neighborhood. I was going to take the long way to see if I could find the culprit. Sure enough, I see a kid on a scooter standing in his driveway with a CO2-powered BB gun, aiming in the drainage cavity by the sidewalk. I see cats in there all the time. It was then I knew who the culprit was. I parked the car, got out, walked over to him, and said, "I'm telling your parents that you're shooting cats." He replied, "They are pests. They told me I could." The smug little look on his face threw me over the edge. I slapped the frick out of this bee and kick-sweeped his legs out from under him and watched him fall flat on his ass. Then I picked up his gun and smashed it on the ground. A small part of me wanted to finish him off with a stomach kick for good measure, but I'm freaking 25. So I looked both ways before crossing the street and bolted. As I hopped in my car and sped away, I heard him shrieking in the distance. My kitty was treated and is doing okay. She is a lot more skittish and spends less time outside. They told me I could. Well, frick them too. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Bye-bye-bye-bye-bye.